Florida's housing market is, quote, turning down fast. This is from Newsweek in the past week, citing the fact that unsold inventory in Florida is now at a decade high rate of inventory at 180,000 unsold homes. And they cited the fact that this once sizzling housing market is now seeing a transition. This was also covered by the local news here in Orlando. WFTV says Florida's unsold inventory hits record highs, and Central Florida is a big contributor. And they go into the article and talk about the fact that many of the zip codes here in the Central Florida market in the Orlando metro are up over 50% year over year, saying that housing inventory is stacking up, begging the question amongst all these articles, is Florida headed for a crash? Is Orlando in trouble? Or is it just a slight correction? And as I've made it my goal to make sure you are informed, we're going to dive into the May data for Orlando. And I'm going to make some comparisons. I want you to understand what is happening on the state level, what's happening within Orlando, and how do we look compared to other markets you might be considering, such as Tampa or Jacksonville. We're also going to take a closer look here to see where there might be buyer's market opportunities in Orlando and some that are seller's markets. But as we dive into the data, dive down below, smash the thumbs up as a big thank you for the hard work it goes into putting this together for you every few weeks. Let's get into the update. All right, my friends, we're going to start by looking at new listing inventory. Now, this is a very important factor to watch if you're trying to understand how the housing market is doing. Is it correcting? Are we going to see an oversupply of homes hitting the market? A lot of people in the news like to take and create a narrative that people have to sell. They're being forced to sell because of pressure, and that also creates a fear of a potential housing market. And the way you can measure that is you kind of see, is there a lot of people bringing houses into the market? Now, one thing I want you to see here on the right edge of the graph, which, by the way, this goes up to April of 2025. Now, I'm going to give you May because I tabulated, as I told you in the introduction, but all these charts I'm going to show you, this is the Florida Association of Realtors data. If you have a license, you can log into the back of this and pull this data and show it to folks. But basically on the left edge of the graph is 2019. And I want to show you going into the same period of time, April, May of 2019, we had almost 4,000 listings. April of 19, over 4,300 listings, May of 2019. Now look at where we're at now. I'm going to tell you in May, we're going to be 1,000 seller listings short of what we had in May of 2019. Way fewer listings than pre-pandemic, okay? So there's less sellers. Now, this isn't a new story because we already know many sellers have 3% 30-year fixed interest rates. And right now, the interest rate's probably around 6.9% for a 30-year with good credit. And those people are going to stay put, which is why the marketplace is kind of locked down. But look at this. If you look at January till year to date, there was a concern right here because this is December going into January of this year. There was a huge move upward and we had a lot of listings hit the market for January. In fact, it was almost 20% higher year over year. Florida across the state had a big move. But one thing we're seeing now is that we had our typical March, April, May run up, which, by the way, usually goes into June or July. We usually see new listings kind of increasing into the summer. That is not going to happen because in May, we are going to have this number fall off. So May is going to be flat against last year. The prior months, we had an increasing amount of new supply.
Hey, it's me interrupting myself. Are you selling or buying? One call, that's all you need, and put nearly 4,000 home sales and 23 years of experience to work for you.
Jared Jones is the way to go. Call 706-5000.
So let me show you a chart of the greater Orlando area, all of its zip codes, okay? So you have the heart of downtown here. Anything you see in blue is way fewer new listings in the most recent month of data that we have, okay? So this is all May broken down. Anything in red is going to have a higher productivity in listings. So for instance, if you look down here, 32789, that's the prime Winter Park zip code, is up 36%. Look at Hunters Creek. Hunters Creek produced 32 listings in May of 2024. This year they produced 60. They're up 90%. So one of the things I want you to know is that this is a snapshot in time. It is not an end-all notion that if all of these red zip codes are red, that they must be very high in inventory. So for instance, 32817, if I click on this zip code, this is East Orlando, take a monthly view, and if I want to check out what does the inventory level look like in this particular zip code in history. Now look at this. That is fascinating, okay? So in 32817, you can see right here that on the far right side of the graph, this dotted line down the middle represents a 9-year average. Its 9-year average is 39. It's got 75 homes on the market. So that is a big, big run up in its inventory. But if you were to go back 32789, I just showed you, look at where it's at. It's barely above a 9-year average. It's been low. It's been light on how much inventory it has. Hunter's Creek, I just pointed that one out as well for having 90% more inventory than last year. Their for sale inventory, look at this, 142 units in this area. Its 9-year running average is 93. Would that be possibly a favorable situation for the buyer or for the seller? You got it. Once again, this is new listing volume across all the zip codes. I'd recommend you hit pause if you're interested in a particular area, zoom in on it, take a look, because if it's bright red, there's a lot more new listings in that area right now. If it's blue, it's the opposite. All right, my friends, closed sales in the past month, 2,500 units, down almost a couple hundred units for 7% downward trend against 2024. And again, look at 2019, 3,300 units. And again, market size, it's a lot bigger now. There's a lot more people here, a lot more potential trades. You can see the business is somewhat anemic. Now, the only thing I want to show you on here is that we are flirting for the last 2 years. Closed sales looks really the same. So 2022, you can see the end of those easy low 30-year fixed, and look at the market size since then. It's been right here, then right here again, and then 2025 is even a little leaner in terms of how many closed. It's very, very close to trading against the last 2 years. It's really the same story in terms of closed sales.
List your home for just 3%. You heard me right. I'm Jared Jones, top selling agent, local Winter Garden resident, and I list your home for just 3% so that you can keep more of your hard-earned equity. Make one call, that's all. Call Jared Jones today, list your home for 3%, and start packing.
Jared Jones is the way to go. Call 706-5000.
All right, now the next thing we want to talk about is active inventory. Where is unsold homes? This is ultimately what makes most of the news headlines these days. Is the amount of homes sitting around it's really high, and this is kind of where the hook gets created for negative news. Okay, so let's take a look at it. How bad is unsold inventory? Is the inventory piling up as is purported? Okay, so here it is. Active listings, May of 2025 is approaching 9,600 units against last year. It's up 34%. Okay, so this is on my count. This is me hand mapping the MLS. But let me go and show you the chart, and this is the visual that everybody is casting. You can see this level down here, 2021, was a record shortage of housing inventory. And ever since then, it's gradually been climbing to where it is today. Now, here in the Sun stats for last month, it's showing that it approached the 10,000 home mark. And here in the data chart, you can see on the far right side, it approaches 10,000 units for single family. If you cut a line all the way back to the left, you would go back 10 years. That's right. The chart I'm showing you, as I told you, is up to 2019. But if you go backwards, you cannot find a data point where our inventory is at the level it is now until you hit around 2015. Now, you also have to take in consideration, if you're being fair to the data, is that the population is a lot higher now. There's a lot more housing units now. There's also a bit of a locked up housing market. There, in reality, should be more listings sitting on the market, but we just don't have the inventory, which is, if in all rights, it's maybe staving off this being even a little bit higher than it is now. Now let's go to the zip code map. And before I do, you got to have a standard to look at all these zip codes. Okay. So if Oviedo is up 78% year over year, is that really bad? Well, you got to compare that with the rest of Orlando. The rest of Orlando is up right at 35%. So 34.4%, which, by the way, most of the national charts are the same. Most of the country is around 34, 35, high as 40% year over year. But if you go here and you look, you want to see who is really climbing. And it's a fascinating tale, because if you look at inventory levels across this marketplace, where you're seeing the market shift the most, okay, the inordinate amount of increased inventory stacking is kind of in two areas at the very top of the list. Number one is the South, okay? So Osceola County, even North Polk, where we have Airbnb, we got a lot of FHA buyers, things of that nature. All of them are contributing factors to a increase in inventory because they're in the mix, okay? Now, the second thing I want to share with you is the fact that throughout the east, you're starting to see inventory starting to creep up. Now, some of these areas, as I told you earlier, they're like a dry, barren desert. They're already super low coming into 2024 and in 2025. They need the increase. They're increasing on this chart. They're glowing bright red like an Oviedo, and you have a mounting up of this north area like where Maitland, North Orlando, Winter Park. Many of those areas have been tight. They just don't have incredibly high supply to begin with. So if you are interested in these areas, the red is higher inventory. It's a higher increasing trend. The ones that are more clear are going to be more on the average of the rest of Orlando. The ones that are blue are anemic with inventory, which there's not a lot of blue on this chart, let's be honest. But everything else, you're starting to see clearing out. Now, it's a fascinating shift down to the south. I got to say something before I shift graphs. The south has been raging red, okay? So, over the past year and a half, as I do these data updates, Osceola County, which is Kissimmee, parts of St. Cloud, Harmony, even up the east side of East Lake Tahoe, and down in the Davenport Champions Gate area, you have been seeing me report, there it is again. It's like clockwork. It's like Groundhog Day. It's up again. It's up again. Inventory is increasing in these areas, but notice it's leveling off. So all this clear area where it's typically bright red on these updates, the pace of growth year over year. Now, by the way, it is sustained high. So yes, it's not growing year over year like it was, but these are already at higher levels. And that's the key point about making these updates, because you need to see where there's market movement, especially, things change from time to time and then they ease off. And it'll be interesting to see in a moment when I look at price cuts with you to see if there's some evidential change in specific areas. And as a result of high increasing inventory, is there a reflexive response in sellers saying, I got to get out, I'm going to cut the price? All right, my friends, next on the list is pending listings. Pendings is important because it tells us how many homes are going under contract. It's a good measure of buyer activity. And if you see buyer activity anemic, there's a leading indicator that your sales, your closings will be off. So this is a very easy tell because we already know what happened with closings. We're at 3,300 units under contract right now for the most recent month. That is down from last year by 2.2%. So shocker, when we get into June next month, what are you going to see down again? Closings. Closings are going to be down. They've been down all year. And look how much smaller the buyer market is now versus May 2019. In 2019 May, we had almost 4,800 buyers under contract versus only 3,300. Unbelievable. That's why you're hearing about people getting out of the real estate business right now, because the business is smaller. It is just less transactions, less turns to deal with. Now, my friends, it's time to give you empirical data, some concrete proof of a housing market crash, because you're not going to believe this chart. Median sale price, May 2025 is up about 1.6% from May of 2024. So it's 457,000 this year on my data pull out of the MLS. And then last year is 450,000, same exact data pull. 2019, we were up 63% over 2019. So let me show you that empirical data. Take a look at this. As you can see, we had a peak boom in June. 430 was a number we had never seen. In fact, it was 431 the month before. So May of 2020 marks this end of this pandemic run up to 431,000. And as you can see, since then, the market has crashed right down. No, it hasn't. It's actually 457. So this is what I keep reporting, and this is what people don't want to hear, and I understand it. I think that buyers would love to see softness in the price of homes. Tell me in the comments if you're a home buyer or potential buyer, or you'd be an aspirational buyer if you had a lower price. And I bet you that there's probably even some homeowners that secretly wouldn't mind a lower price themselves, even though it would affect the home they live in. There's some upsides. Again, not getting into all that, but look at this. You have a flattening home price. It is literally bouncing around up and down. And by the way, you see some dips and you see some flat lines and you see some increases. Okay. That's going to produce every once in a while a negative month of data, and then next month, an increasing month of data. So this is a hard data point to watch month over month. But when it goes negative for a month, everybody loves to report on it. Oh, home prices are down over last year. Okay, great. Next month, they're going to be up. But look and pull back at the trend, and you can see it has been running largely flat to the chagrin of many in my comments.
If you're in the Central Florida area and you're looking for a great church, I'd love for you to join me at the Grove Bible Chapel. Just visit joinmeatthegrove.com for full details. When you're buying or selling a home, the process itself can feel overwhelming. When this happens, you need a real estate expert that can turn this around for you. So all you need to do, make one call, that's all, and put nearly 4,000 homes sold and my 23 years of experience to work for you.
Jared Jones is the way to go. Call 706-5000.